The other area we wanted to talk about, just touch on this story in coming out of Texas with migrant children who are in record number now being detained in a facility meant for adults down in Texas. Talking about a little over 3,000 children. Now, to be clear, these are children who are legitimately unaccompanied, across the border without their parents. This is as opposed to during the Trump administration, parents would come across with their children. They were then separated, and then they would classify the children as unaccompanied. Yet, there is the clear statutory prohibition against keeping these children in a facility like this for more than 3 days. What is supposed to happen, and according to the Department of Homeland Security, is that Health and Human Services is supposed to place these children in some type of foster care, some type of temporary situation. Now, my sense is, and I would take your your opinion on this, but my sense is, when you look at what happened with the Berks facility in Pennsylvania, this was a notorious detention center for families in Pennsylvania. That has basically been emptied out. They haven't closed it yet, but there's no one there. My sense is that the Biden administration is in terms of their immigration policy at this point, it is a complete mess. And they haven't been able to execute anything. I think that that there's a lot of mixed messages and poor execution in certain areas. But here's the bottom line. We've got, we're sending a mission to Mars. You can put a rover up there, right? Send us pictures. You can find the relative of these unaccompanied children and send them there. I mean, these children are not walking across the border without the idea that they don't have family members in this country. They do. That's why they're unaccompanied. That's why their parents were okay having them walk across the border, because they knew they had cousins or aunts or uncles or brothers or sisters or grandparents who are living in this country. And it is just a question of how much resources are we going to dedicate to making sure that these children are not kept in a jail.
Meant for adults.
Meant for adults.
I mean, that's what we're seeing. And so there is so much implicit racism in the way a lot of these stories are framed too. And I guarantee in the way that these children are treated by officials, no matter the party that's leading the federal government at the current time. And they don't show deference to these children. I think they treat them, much of this, similarly to the same studies that we've seen about how children who aren't white are often assumed to be older. I think they're treated with more barbarity, more callousness. And the Biden administration has been so messy in their response to this. ICE is basically went rogue at the start of Biden's term because he's not shown strong leadership in trying to basically gut these departments that have been shown to be abusive and violating human rights at every turn. There is critique here because if Biden wanted to address this in a more substantive way, he would have abolished ICE, which he was never going to do. And there would be more holistic immigration practices implemented from the top down. And I understand that it's messy, but part of this mess is because he decided to tweak things as opposed to overhaul them.
Right. I mean, go ahead, Matt.
I also want to emphasize, to the extent there is a rush now at the start of this Biden administration, we should say it reflects poorly on repressive and, gumming things up at the border itself, right? These are people that may think now that Biden's in, we might have a chance. And hopefully, actually, like Sam said, we actually do change these policies where these kids can go. But this is actually an argument against having a period where you have Trump in, because this is just basically a backlog of people that have been waiting to get in now.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And this is also, look, we're also heading into a season where essentially this trek becomes a lot less becomes less perilous. I don't want to say a lot less for people. So you will always see a surge in the summer. But the Biden administration's got to figure out what their broad policy is going to be. They have a tremendous amount of discretion here. They are court ordered not to keep these kids in there for 3 days. And so they have a lot of leeway
and then again,
to throw resources at it and resolve this.
There's a separate critique, too, about how where are any of the pundits that were as outraged about the child separation, which was a step further in terms of actually kidnapping children. I understand that. But this is also outrageous and not something any civilized country should be doing. Needs to be more aggressively called out by media members. So the hypocrisy is very glaring in that area.
And we should just say NBC News had reported supporting what Matt said. Many of the children arriving at the border initially immigrated during the Trump administration were quickly expelled under an order from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention meant to protect immigrants and U.S. residents from COVID-19. There is no reason to believe that these kids were any more subjected to COVID-19 than anybody else, particularly in Texas. Thank you. The Biden administration reversed the policy for unaccompanied children, and that's why they're allowed across the border as opposed to sent back at that time. So at the very least, the whole system is a mess. And there needs to be resources that are applied to this to help these kids. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll just do a little coda on the Lincoln Project.